And Tim will be teaching next quarter. The material for their class is on the bench in the foyer just through this door over here to my right. So pick up a folder out there. Be ready for next quarter as they continue this United Kingdom section of our cycle. I appreciate very much the opportunity to be in here this last quarter. You don't know how much I enjoy teaching. I think as I get older, we have this 3-year cycle we go through. How many more cycles can I do to my mind or my body when it's played out? I don't know. But I dread the day for it. It's just getting there. So, but I do enjoy it, and I appreciate you putting up with me for a quarter. Okay, this morning we're going to talk about 4 Psalms that have to do with David's penitence after his round with Bathsheba. So before we do that, let's go back and think about 2 Samuel 11 and 12 a little bit and get our minds back to that to that event, which will make these Psalms tie in a little bit better. Before we get to 2 Samuel 11, what was David's status? Where was David as far as his reign is concerned up through 2 Samuel chapter 10? He was at the peak of his I searched for the right word to use there. He was at the peak of everything. His borders had expanded. He had treasure he had brought in when he had gone out and battled against other people and captured the bounty there. His relationship with God was outstanding. He inquired the Lord when he wanted to know something. They were on the same page. We'll see a comment about that later on. So up through 2 Samuel 10, things were great with David. In 2 Samuel 11, you see this mistake David made. We talked about it last time in detail. And things just take a nosedive. And it's never again that same again. Now, is David restored the relationship with God? Sure he is. We'll talk about that this morning. But it's never to the extent it was before. So 2 Samuel 11, verse 1, time that the kings go out to battle. David sends Joab out with the army. David stays in Jerusalem. He's getting up from afternoon rest, and he looks and sees Bathsheba. What point we make right there about that? Now remember, what if David had stopped right there? That's it. David saw her, recognized she's beautiful, turned, walked away, and dropped it. It had been entirely different rewritten from there on. We wouldn't have 2 Samuel 11, 12 like we do, or in the rest of David's woes that you're going to get into next quarter. But David didn't. He sent in, inquired about her. What did he find out about her? She's the wife of Uriah the Hittite. But she was married. He didn't drop it there either. He sent for her to come to him, and he committed adultery with her. Then she comes back and says, I'm pregnant. So now David's got other problems. Where's Uriah? He's on with Joab, with the army. So he calls Uriah back under the pretense of a house of war going Uriah. Ask him about that. A deceit there. Then Uriah showed extreme honor in that he won't do what? Won't go to his own house and be with his own wife. Because the army is out camped in the open field. And so it kind of spoils David's plan. So after 2 nights of that, David writes a letter. What's the letter say? Essentially, in a nutshell. Kill Uriah. And who delivers the letter back to Joab? Uriah does. That's how far David's gone in the situation now. So Uriah's killed, word comes back to David. And what's David's reaction to it then? Well, you go to war. That's what happens. Some get killed, some don't. Then we go to chapter 12, and Nathan comes to David and tells him this story about the rich man with his lambs and the poor man with his one little ewe lamb. And the rich man, of course, takes the one and feeds it to the guests that come to town. What kind of reaction David have? That little story. He got totally angry, very upset. What happened to that man? What should be done to him? He ought to die, okay? That's how bad David thought it was. If somebody would do this, he ought to die. Did David see himself? Couldn't see it. Even with the story, still couldn't see it. Finally, Nathan said, what? David, you're the man that did that. You did that. And David realized what had happened. Now, another crisis one here. Now, how did David react? How many excuses did he make? Who did he blame it on? What happened then? He didn't blame anybody. He simply said, I have sinned. I see it. Yes, I'm that guy. And that pretty much lays the scene then for these Psalms we have today. As David's penitence comes through and his acknowledgement of his sin and his desire to be restored with his relationship with God. That's what these 4 Psalms are about. We'll look at today. 2 points from last time. This, I think I said, I think about what I said. I think I made an error when I said it. The action David had taken with Bathsheba kind of laid the groundwork for, I think I said Absalom and Tamar. Absalom and Tamar are actually brothers and sisters. It's Amnon and Tamar, and Absalom kills Amnon because of it, which goes to one of the consequences of this whole thing that David had. And there are 3 consequences God gave him. What are they? Remember? It's not the child they had from Bathsheba. Child dies. What about the bloodiness? Sword's not going to depart from David's house, and that's part of it here. Absalom kills Amnon, and Joab kills Absalom. Solomon kills Adonijah, and your wives be given to someone else. Hope y'all don't kill me back here and told me, thank you. Okay, your wives be given to someone else. Okay, that's the 3 consequences. Now, there they are. One thing I didn't talk about, and Albert mentioned this to me after class, and I thought about it when I was going through and doing the prep work, but I just totally forgot to mention it. And this will come up in the next quarter too. But part of this whole consequence thing is how bad it got for David. And that is, his own son, Absalom, comes in and to overthrow the kingdom, to take the kingdom from David. To the extent that David is literally run out of town, run out of Jerusalem. That's how bad things have gotten from the pinnacle of David's own down to where he's going. This is a couple of chapters over in chapter 15. The king went out with all the people after him and stopped out at the outskirts. That's at the outside, the edge of Jerusalem. As they're fleeing Jerusalem, leaving the path of the palace, leaving David's house that Hiram had built for him. All the country wept with a loud voice. All the people crossed over. The king himself crossed over the brook Kidron. Remember, if you go out the east side of Jerusalem, down through the Kidron Valley, across the brook, up on the other Mount of Olives, and then they're fleeing down to the wilderness. So this is how far David has come in his results and consequences of this situation with Bathsheba. Let's look this morning at some of these Psalms. We'll start with 6. I'll move up. And you're going to find every one of them are very, very common. The themes, they're all 6 of these, be very much the same type thing. So turn to Psalm 6. We're not going to play through it verse by verse, but let's look at another context. Yes, sir. Sure. Yeah, what Brother Buford is saying is, we made the point that David didn't look and seen Bathsheba and then turned away from it. Sin would never occurred. But once the first sin occurred, then David's got a problem. How's he going to handle that sin? Well, he adds more sin to it. Then when Uriah won't do what he wants him to, what he adds more sin to it, and just keeps adding to it, trying to find his way out by adding more and more sin. Only when Nathan comes to him and David recognizes what he's done, then he says, "I have sinned." Then he turns to these psalms. Okay? Had he not done that, the sin would have kept rolling and rolling. Yes, sir. Albert showed me a Eastside website this morning. On that Eastside website, on the YouTube site where our videos are, there's a picture that here I neither one wanted to see. Okay. YouTube we put up there. We had no control over it. Did you see that? What do you do with it? Okay. It's there. You turn and you get it off and you go on. It's when they linger on it. David's lingering on his appetite with Bathsheba. That started all this trouble. Sometimes we're exposed to things. Go to Walmart and see dress you don't like. But what you do with it, that makes a difference. Okay, Psalm 6. Psalm 6. I hope you read these things. If you don't, they have a hard time making some sense to you. You actually plow through them and look at them. But this psalm kind of divides itself into two parts, verses 1 through 7, and then verse 8 through 10. The first part is David's petition to God, okay? And then the second is the turnaround, the restoration. And all four of these have that same basic outline to them. And in the first part, there's a disapproval of what's wrong, what he's done wrong. He realizes it is wrong, he disapproves, and then there's a petition for what's good. And then there's restore me, getting down to verse 8. The Lord heard my weeping, the Lord heard my supplication. We'll talk about that. So it kind of breaks into two parts. But David recognizes and what he did about it. David sees a deep consciousness of sin. You're going to see that through all four of these psalms as well. David recognizes his sin. That's what the key part. Making sin right, getting the right reaction to it is recognizing we have it. He also sees God's just displeasure with it. God is just when he says, you sinned against me and I don't like it. We're going to see God's anger in some of these psalms here. Well, the first verse of this psalm starts out that way. So three of them do. But God doesn't like it when we sin. God is justly displeased with our sin. He starts off, do not rebuke me in your anger, but chasten me in your hot displeasure. You ever had some of you have to think way back to this now. You had your parent come after you with a belt. They were really angry. Or have you, when you've disciplined one of your children, realizing you're about to spank them or that I need to cool off before I do this? Discipline during anger, we don't like. And David looks at this with God. He says, don't discipline me, don't rebuke me in your anger. Is God angry at sin? Sure he is. David was angry when he realized what the results of the little parable that Nathan had told him there. And that's the way God is. God doesn't like sin. God gets angry with sin. Not at us. He will take us, but he doesn't like sin. Don't rebuke me in your anger. Chasten me when you're displeased. Don't put the judgment on me when you're in that mind like that. Because what's going to change it? What's going to change that is my attitude toward the sin. When I show penitence, then God will show his mercy to me. Okay? Here's what David says then. To get God back in that relationship with God, he says, have mercy. Heal me with these phrases. My soul is troubled. You'll see that through all these psalms. Yes, God, save me. So he doesn't come to God, boast of his sins, unrepentant of his sins. He comes to God with an attitude that God will take him back because of his penitence. I'm weary. I've been weeping all night. My bed is wet with my tears. Look at this little saying here. I found in one of the commentaries. It's an awful thing to be obligated to say, return, O Lord. For us to have to go to God and say, come back to me, Lord, come back. Because what? That means we have left the Lord, okay? So it's bad for us to have to go say, come back to me, Lord, because it means we have done something that would separate us from him. Sin separates us from God. And yet the point is how great it is to have a merciful God that when we do fall and sin, that he'll accept us back. Okay? That's a great point. So it's bad, yeah, that we have to say, come back, Lord. Because it means we move, we separate ourselves from God through sin. But it's so great that his mercy will allow us to come back. And he'll take us back. He says, the Lord has heard my weeping. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. Get away. Wrong. Leave me. The Lord's heard me. I'm going back to him. The Lord's heard my supplication. He's heard my prayer. That all my enemies be ashamed. I'm going back to the Lord. I return to him. That's what David says in this psalm. He starts off with being so troubled. Heal me, save me. He winds up here with all your enemies, the iniquity of being his enemies. Get away from it. Because I return to the Lord. That's what I need to do. Okay, there's in the order 38 is the next one. Let's look over it. We'll look at it right quick. Like I said, all these are going to be very similar in there. 38 starts off with the exact same words. 6 does. Do not rebuke me in your anger, but chasten me in your hot displeasure. Whatever the sin that's described here in Psalm 38, and it's supposed to be with those scholars that it is the Bathsheba situation. David is deeply sorrowful for it, repents of it, he asks pardon, and he entreats God for support in this psalm. He describes the physical pain and discomfort. And if you read the commentaries, you don't know, there's a disconnect between them about, is David really, really sick, physically sick when he's describing this song? Or is it the sickness that the sin has made for him? He writes it like he was totally sick. It may just be that he's writing it, he personifies what the sin has done to him and how sick the sin has made him. Verse 4, he talks about one who is sinking deep in waters, if you will. The sin around me has just come in and it just covered me up. I'm that deep in sin. It's just because, as Buford said, one sin led to another, led to another, led to another. And I'm just being overwhelmed with it. Please get a copy of today's bulletin. If you haven't picked one up already or read it online. David Watson wrote an article, The Deep Things of Satan. He said, in too deep. And that's exactly what David's talking about, this David, in his article. It's being in over our heads in sin. And it ties right in exactly the point here. David says, I was sinking. The sin was just overwhelming me. But at the end of the song, when he turns things around, he begs 3 things. He begs God's presence. He says, forsake me not. I need God. Help me, O Lord. And then he says, do it with haste. Don't prolong. Come back with haste. I'll read you a little paragraph. I got the beginning and ending of it on the screen up there, but it's just a little bit longer than that, not much. It says, nothing will disquiet the heart of a good man so much as the sense of God's anger. The way to keep the heart quiet is to keep ourselves in the love of God. But a sense of guilt is too heavy to bear. It would sink men into despair and ruin unless removed by the pardoning mercy of God. If there were not sin in our souls, there would be no pain in our bones, no illness in our bodies. The guilt of sin is a burden to the whole creation, which groans under it. It will be a burden to the sinners themselves when they are heavy laden under it, or a burden of ruin when they sink them to hell. We often perceive our true condition. The good position will be valued, sought, and obeyed. Yet many let their wounds rankle because they delay to go to their merciful friend. When at any time we're distempered in our bodies, we ought to remember how God has been dishonored in and by our bodies. The groanings which cannot be uttered are not hid from him that searches the heart and knows the mind of the Spirit. Why are we hurting? Why was David sick in his body? He was sick because of sin. I don't mean every time we're physically sick, sin did it. But David felt because of the sin. I got a dead battery, Greg. Okay, we turn to 51. Well, I guess this battery changed out, if you would. Psalm 51. Yes, sir. Okay, Psalm 51 is probably the most familiar of all these four Psalms. We look at it. Psalm 51. Some scholars say this Psalm was not about that particular situation. And they use verse 4 to base that on. Back in verse 4, he said, against thee alone have I sinned. And that is a big situation that's not true. Rod and help. So they take that verse and say it could be about the Bathsheba situation. And yet, other scholars look at it and say, you know, God really really sinned against us. Well, that's what important. I have one day to make it in the Psalm. God is the one who's got to get concerned about the first thing. Also, sometimes you use the Psalm, verse 5, talk about the original sin. The man is born in sin. Paul put the iniquity from my mother's womb, verse 5. You know, he died in that. Okay, Psalm 51. very familiar song. Like the more so than the other song. David confesses his sin. He prays for pardon for his sin. Prays for peace, his consciousness. He prays to sin no more. Have access back to God again. We want to have our truly Psalms. The last two both talk about teaching others. Psalms of instruction and encouragement. Psalms to help others. First Kings 15, verse 4 and 5. I have a reference to this point here. 1 Kings 15:4. It's not talking about Solomon. It says David, talking about David. Nevertheless, when David sang, he makes a point on Psalm verse 5. Because David did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and not turned aside from anything that he commanded in all the days of his life, except what? The thing we've been talking about. That's the point. In David's life, that was what he disobeyed God. One more short piece. I know you're having a hard time here. I'm sorry. This is very short. The sin which of this psalm he laments, David, was the folly and wickedness he committed with his neighbor's wife. A sin not to be spoken of or thought of without intent dislike. He corrupted of Bathsheba with the image of all other sins that follow. They get more of it. With the letting forth of the water, it won't float you down. The sin of David is recorded for warning to all that he who thinks he stands may take heed lest he fall. Where was David before this sin? David had ever done this to God. Never did. And yet he did. But what's the warning to us? Take heed wherever I am, as pitiful I am, as religious I am. In this psalm, we see what true repentance really is. David convicted of sin. Everything good and human man, David said, I have sinned. He confessed that sin. He showed sorrow for it. Pray to God, who always saw in mercy. He wants to amend these things and make them right. And he has faith in God's will. All these things involve David's faith. Look at verse 19. Back up. Go back to about 16. You do not desire sacrifice, else I will give it. David's living under the Old Testament law. Did God want sacrifice under the Old Testament law? All kinds of them, right? So why would David say in verse 16 that you don't want sacrifice? What does he want first? Verse 17. He wants your heart right. He wants my heart right. Okay? You don't want sacrifice. Sacrifice to God in a broken spirit and broken contrite heart. What does God want first? He wants our heart right. Then he'll take our sacrifice. Same kind of day. How does God want us to think to come to work for him? What do? We have all against the brother in the car. We'll make it right first. We get things right. Then we come working. That's what David is saying. Okay? So verse 19 he said, after he did us, then he said, you'll be pleased with sacrifices. I get things straightened out. I get things right with me and God. With my heart right. Then God bless my sacrifice. All the time. All the time. Yes, that's Mark 5. Okay, we got one more. And again, all of them the same pattern. Psalm 32. We start talking about blessed. Blessed is a justified person. A person who's forgiven and reconciled before God. What's the word blessed? We've got the Beatitudes, the blessed of this, blessed. What do we use to place that word sometimes? Blessed. Happy? Happy is the man who does this. Happy is the man who does that. What David's saying here. Happy. David happy in his sin. David happy when this is going on. And Nathan pointed out to him. What's all these Psalms been saying? He's been sick. He feels awful. He says, happy is his person. Happy is the person who's justified. Happy is the person who's forgiven. Unhappy. Unhappy is the man without justification. Like David starts with Psalm 1. Now later on he says it's a psalm of teaching. He says, don't be stubborn. Trust in the Lord. But David was missing. He lists out in these first verses 4 evils. 4 different words here. And look at them. Blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity, and in him in whose spirit is no guile or deceit who can transgress. Transgression, sin, iniquity, and guile or deceit are all listed, all 4 things here. Transgression. Transgression is passing beyond the boundary. If I transgress, I with the word cross, I transgress, I cross the boundary that God's given me. Transgression is going to go beyond. Sin is missing the mark, not doing what God told me to do. Disobeying his commandment. Iniquity is turning to the side, turning out the proper course. God was deceived and fraud, and we saw that in David's sin. So 4 things he lists here. And look what he says about these things. In these same 2 verses here. He says, blessed is the man who lists these 4 things. What does he say about it? Blessed is the man whose transgression is, he got forgiven. He got covered. It's not covered up like David's trying to cover it. It's covered by God's forgiveness by the blood of Christ. It's covered. It's not imputed. Not imputed. It's not credited. It's not charged again. So blessed or happy with me are we when our transgressions are forgiven. Happy are we when our sins are covered. When they're taken away by the blood of Christ. Happy are we when God doesn't count our sins against us. How does that happen? David said, I hid my sin. I didn't confess it. And I was miserable. What he said in the other 4 Psalms was great. Same thing. Sick. I was miserable. If we have a real conscience that knows what's right, how do we feel when we sin? How do we feel when we sin? Know we've done something wrong. Our conscience is bothering us. How do we feel? So this is about as sick as David. If we don't, we got another problem. And he said, I was hiding my sin. I didn't confess it. And I was miserable. And I kept silent. Didn't confess it. Didn't ask for pardon. Good is still conscious. Another word to use. Fear, horror, trouble with the soul. How do you get this happiness back? All this not sin to God. 32 of this song says, I always my sin to you, my victory I've not hidden. I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, who gave me a mind. How's that? Good. That's John chapter 1. That's our sin. Faithful and just, give us our sin. Rent us from all of life. Almost reached out. But what's the answer? Do we sin? Do we sin? We don't hopefully go out and commit adultery. We don't go out and have somebody murdered. Sin. What do we do about it? We have no conscience that doesn't bother us. We have a conscience that does bother us. We don't react to it. The conscience that bothers us. We confess it. God saves us. Okay, 2 minutes. Well, I got something to say. Submission, total submission to him. Psalm, left the rock, comes to mind. I made that point last time, exactly that. How do we go see someone who's sinned? Do we go like Nathan, try to approach them in a way, let them see their sin, like Nathan did? Sometimes it work. What Nathan had to do finally? Say, do that. But the approach first was, let's see if we get him to see his sin and recognize it. So our approach to those who have sinned against us or sin in general. Why sheet of paper and lay it across it? No. Cover it up. Cover it with a photograph. Okay, again, thank you very much for the quarter. I've enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. Thank you.